I had Jensen Huang on the BG2 podcast last year. It's when people were saying, oh, this training is hitting an upper bound and all this AI is overblown. And remember, NVIDIA fell and all these AI stocks were falling. And Jensen Huang said on the podcast, he said, we are now moving into inference time reasoning where the machines begin to recursively think for themselves. And he said at that moment, inference isn't going to 10x, it isn't going to 100x, it isn't going to million x, it's going to 1 billion x. Everything in the world is going to be inference. And what has happened this year? Exactly what he said. The token production at Google has gone parabolic. At Amazon, parabolic. Why? Because everybody in the world is using ChatGPT to get answers to their consumer questions. Every single search now on Google is an inference search because they want to give an AI answer. The era of 10 blue links is dead. And now every single person on the planet expects answers. And for enterprises, they expect the same. And I will tell you, we are in the first inning. It may be the first batter in the first inning. And so it feels like a lot. But what we're seeing this year, what we're hearing, these moves by the biggest companies on the planet, none of this is surprising. This is the beginning of a massive wave. Oracle reported last night, right? Incredible numbers, accelerating numbers in terms of the data center and compute build out. Jensen Huang said over in Paris this week, he estimates $1.5 trillion of AI compute build out. On the Middle East visit that I was on recently, we're going to build massive Stargate cluster in the UAE. They're going to build in Saudi Arabia. We're going to diffuse AI technology from the United States critically around the world with the repeal of the Biden diffusion rule, which was essential. And so we are in this phase of acceleration. It's not to say that there won't be companies, right, that get overvalued in that phase. But I just gave a talk this past weekend at my 25th business school reunion up in Boston. And I talked about Henry Blodgett's $400 call on Amazon back in 2000, right? What do you think Amazon is today relative to the $400 call that Henry Blodgett made in 2000? He got ridiculed and laughed off of Wall Street for it. But Amazon is up 87 times today from where it was when he made that call. The reality is we overestimate in the very short term what these things will do, but we dramatically underestimate in the long term. And that's what I think you see in the market today. You see this acceleration because every one of the smartest players in Silicon Valley, whether you're running Amazon, whether you're running Meta, whether you're running OpenAI, whether you're running Google, they all tell me the same thing. We have to do whatever it takes in order to capture and invest in that future. That's why their capex is going parabolic. That is great for the entire AI compute stack, whether you're TSM, whether you're NVIDIA, whether you're CoreWeave, where we're investors as well. All of these companies, ARM, et cetera, are going to benefit from that compute build out. And then now we're seeing it in the applications, right? The companies I mentioned, like Snowflake and Databricks, we're seeing it, in the end user applications where we're seeing accelerating growth at places like ChatGPT, right? ChatGPT got to 1 billion searches a day, right? 8 years faster than Google did. This is not internet time. This is AI hyperspeed. It is way faster. OpenAI today is 4 times the size that Google was when it went public in terms of revenue, in terms of searches, right? So I think for people, now is a time where people could say the market bounced a lot off the bottom. Right? I came on here when, earlier this year and said we had taken our exposures way down because I wasn't sure whether government was going to be supportive or whether it was going to get in the way of this AI supercycle. Now it's very clear to me. They are pushing it. They know in order for America to win in the balance of global power, we must win in AI.
So, Malcolm, don't look at from the bottom to today. Look at from today to as far as tomorrow, literally and figuratively, can bring you in thinking about these stocks. Everybody owns Amazon on the desk today. You own Oracle, so you understand what Brad's talking about. How do you see these stocks now?
So let me first clarify, I don't own Oracle personally, but a number of our clients do. But I completely agree. I listened to the Oracle call, for example, and I hear Ellison talk about how he's getting phone calls from CEOs who are saying to him, I just need the capacity regardless of where it has to come from. Go get me capacity and I will pay you for it. Probably not in the history since the invention of the internet has that kind of a conversation and that kind of a gold rush been the conversation. So you're talking to somebody whose own personal portfolio over-indexes by a wide margin to software and a lot of the companies that we're talking about. So where you talk about tomorrow and what does tomorrow look like, my one concern in this conversation we're having, not looking the next 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, but just over the next couple of quarters, we don't know how much of the great earnings that Josh was talking about before from Q1 was the pull forward from folks worried about April 2nd. We won't know for another 3 or 4 weeks, and so this is the moment where the markets probably continue to chop sideways until we start to get into Q2 earnings and find out the answer to that. That's my one concern with relation to how hot the market feels like it's rolling right now. We could be about to get some pretty soft guidance from CEOs, which changes a lot of people's attitudes and appetites.
I thought the AWS CEO, Josh, gave us a pretty good reality check. Is literally, we're talking $35 billion in a couple of days about data center, not to mention the billions that the company is investing around the globe. You own the stock too.
Yeah, it's I would say at this moment, it's my favorite of the Mag 7 names. And obviously AI and data centers are a really big part of that story. I just think there's still a lot of money that could come into the name as they start to pull the levers that they are able to pull, and we're starting to see like the real-time results of all of this capex. And it's not just about we have to invest now for 3 years, but it's like no, you don't understand. We're investing now because right now the activity is happening. The land grab is in full effect. I think one of the things that we have to continue to remind ourselves is that the tariff-related situations in the stock market, most of them are not Apple. Most of them are just not terribly important to what the index does. So, and those stocks that have a tariff issue have already been punished. We have just seen absolute whippings in the apparel sector. Look at Nike. Nike is in addition to all its other problems, is a tariff problem. And so it's not as though we're not pricing in these issues. It's that until now, they just haven't affected NVIDIA, haven't affected Microsoft, and they may not. We don't know. So NVIDIA took a massive write-down on China-related stuff, and the stock rallied. So, we are pricing in the impact of the trade war. We are pricing these things in. It's happening on an individual company basis rather than a market-wide basis. And the reason is the biggest market cap companies that are providing most of the earnings growth for the S&P 500 based on bottoms-up outlooks are not going to be affected by tariffs until tariffs spill over and become like an unemployment story. But that hasn't happened yet. So we're kind of in this stasis, and what we have is effectively earnings growth coming from the most important and the largest market cap companies.
Go ahead.
Would you agree that the issue with Amazon's share price, though, specifically as also a shareholder who thinks it's probably the best stock in the Mag 7, the issue may be that investors are considering this an e-commerce play and not paying enough attention to the underlying tech components that you just laid out?
All of the earnings growth is coming from AWS. So if you see the stock rally, it's because people are bullish on AWS.
Not to mention the fact that when I was having the conversation with Matt Garman, and the way people are framing to your very question and to Josh's point, is that AI, as some have written, Amazon wants to be the marketplace for AI. Forget about the marketplace that we all grew up knowing Amazon as. They see themselves as being just that, but for the revolution and the technological innovations that are happening, for AI in and of itself. You guys hit on other interesting points as well. As we speak about the arms race, it is not just Amazon versus Microsoft versus XYZ company, and then the next ones that aren't even public yet. It's the United States versus China. NVIDIA plays a role in that. It plays a role into the trade war, too. Jensen Huang telling CNBC that Huawei, quote, has got China covered if the U.S. doesn't participate there. I thought we had a really interesting conversation with the Andreessen Horowitz general partner, Anj Midha, the angel investor in Anthropic, who talked to me about that arms race and why we have to win it. Let's listen.
This race is happening with or without us, right? Look, it was an extraordinary piece of engineering that DeepSeek put out, right, from China. What it also showed was that our adversaries aren't waiting around for us to get our act together. And so, one way or the other, we don't have a choice but to win.
Brad, I mean, the trade war figures into this conversation heavily, and why there is no choice. We need to come out number one.
This is a critical issue, and I want to unpack two things here, Scott. The first one is about diffusion of American technology to the entire world, right? We call this American AI diffusion. We need the world to run on the American AI stack, okay? A week before the Biden administration left office, they passed a rule called the Biden Diffusion Rule, which was 100 pages that tiered all the world and said, here are all the rules and hoops you need to jump through if you want to sell chips or models to India, to the UAE, et cetera. It would have literally devastated our ability to distribute the American AI stack to the rest of the world. It would have been the equivalent of Google in 2002 having to come to Washington, get on bended knee, and beg the FDA of search to allow them to distribute Google to another country, and the world would have ended up running on Baidu, okay? We didn't do that in 2002, and we should not do it today. The good news is the Biden diffusion rule was repealed by Howard Lutnick, and it needs to stay repealed. We should not run into the void and put a whole bunch of rules in place. We should do exactly what we did in the age of the internet. We should allow our companies to compete, and in the future, a year from now, 2 years from now, we decide we need to have speed limits, safety belts, et cetera. There'll be plenty of time for that. But right now, we need to get the American technology out into the world. The reason for this is because when I was in Saudi Arabia, right, Huawei has gone from 0% market share in Saudi Arabia to 50% market share in Saudi Arabia. You can't tell our friends and allies around the world, like India, like Saudi Arabia, that AI is the most important thing in the world, but we're not going to give you our technology. It's crazy. The Chinese have a full stack. They have chips from Huawei that are only, maybe a half a generation to a generation behind NVIDIA. You just buy more of them. You link them all together, and it's the equivalent. They have the DeepSeek model. They have the full stack. This is an arms race. The U.S. needs to accelerate, and we need to get the decelerationist in Silicon Valley who are trying to use regulatory capture to slow all this down. We need to get them out of the way, and we need to get cooking around the world. That's right. The rest of the world. As it pertains to China, real quick, Scott, there's this belief, right now, NVIDIA has, it went from 80% market share in China, where all the developers, second largest developer market in the world, were developing in CUDA, right? We had them in an American ecosystem, and we were selling them chips. And NVIDIA was paying the U.S. Treasury billions and billions of dollars of taxes, and they were plowing those profits back into staying in the front. Now we've ceded China to Huawei. By giving them monopoly profits and giving them that entire developer ecosystem, it's going to make it easier for them to win the global AI arms race. We need to get NVIDIA back into China, competing with the B30. We need to take the competition to Huawei in their home market, keep those developers in the CUDA ecosystem, keep that market share. That will make it easier for us to win around the world. So these are critical decisions that government is making right now that will determine the next decade as to whether or not we win in the global AI balance of power. And I think we have to win.